Mike, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it, buddy.
Good. You've been staring at numbers all week and getting this NFL draft report ready, I hear.
Yeah, well, I've been staring for almost, it's year to year for me. But finally, we've been able to get everything out and nailed down earlier this week. So, it's a long process, and then you're waiting for the birth date at the end of the month.
When you look right now, we're 3 weeks away. Help us understand what teams are trying to do right now as they make their way through free agency and sort of evaluating their roster, who's too old to play, who's too young to play. Sort of walk us through what teams right now are doing 3 weeks away from the draft.
Well, one, you're setting up your board at this point, numerically, kind of where all these players are ranked. And then, as you do it straight down, you also across. Where does he fit? How does he fit with us? Which player fits us better than maybe someone else? And kind of a horizontal, vertical type situation. So what you're looking at here is to get everybody on the same page as well as you can. Jim Finks told me this many years ago when he was with the Saints, and he would laugh about it, that he said, the biggest joke in the NFL is that everybody's got the same rankings on every player. He said, you go to 32 teams, there are 32 different rankings. You got 6 to 8 scouts with all different opinions, a director of college personnel, a general manager, and a head coach, all having say. And the hardest thing to do is to get everyone to agree that this is the grade, this is who we're looking at, this is who we have a lot of interest in. He said everybody's got a different opinion. And, throughout those years, that's well over 25 years ago, he told me this, it's amazing how the NFL sort of projects this to be everybody's kind of sterile. It's all the same grades, and they'll never criticize another team for making a pick because they don't want to be wrong if they do so, but that it's different opinions. But bottom line, it comes down to, Ryan, which player at that round fits you the best. Not every player is the right fit personnel-wise and also now personality-wise. And that's come into play also. And you also have the third element. A lot of these coaches have chalk in their hands. They want to decide which player. They feel as though, the Parcells line, if you want me to cook the meal, you better let me go shop for the groceries. And they feel as though they have a better eye for talent than some of their scouts. And some of the worst talent evaluators in the world are head coaches, to be honest. They've seen them just a short period of time, or they've watched them on film a little, but they don't delve into it like a scout would. So for the first couple rounds, they're the experts. And you've got a lot of different factors here, but it's trying to get everybody on the same page for players, for positions, and the draft is all about filling needs. They can talk about this best athlete on the board. You can throw that out. You're picking a player that can fill a need for your football team. If you just pick the best athlete on the board, you might have 13 quarterbacks on your roster. You've got to be able to fill the need through the draft, and it is the NFL's version of minimum wage. When you look at what you've got to pay them for 4 years and for a first-round pick, potentially 5, you want to hit on that because financially, you've got them at a pretty cheap price for a number of years down the road.
Mike, when you look at Alabama's former roster, the guys that are going into the NFL draft, who is the first off the board in your opinion?
Oh, it'll be Jonathan Allen. I don't care what people say about the shoulder. I think that's down the road to worry about the shoulder. I think that's an issue that, may bother him later on in his career. But today, dominant football player, can play both on the edge and inside a defensive tackle, has been a sterling football player and a real sharp guy. He understands this game at a different level. But it wouldn't shock me at all to see 3 Alabama football players go in the top 10, and that being Jonathan Allen, O.J. Howard, Reuben Foster.
You know, when you think about the two who came back for their senior season, these guys are making a lot of extra money for coming back and playing one more year. I hope that's a sign for things to come when you look at juniors thinking about coming out.
Well, good luck with that. That's not
right,
going to happen.
Right, but
I mean, just bottom line, a lot of people don't like to hear it, but it's the truth. For a lot of these players, they're going to school to get their PhD in football. And if they feel as though they're a first-round pick or possibly even a second, they come out early. They leave college early because of it. The hard thing is, and you don't know everybody's financial situation. For some players that I've spoke to, they realize they're going to be a middle-round pick, 4th, 5th round. But they have no choice. They feel as though they have to aid their family and help their families out, so they come out early. And I can't. And who would criticize somebody for that, trying to help their own families in that spot? So it's something I think, to be honest with you, we'll always have. We'll always have that impact of juniors coming out early. And which schools get affected the most? You look at it: in Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, LSU, Southern Cal, Oklahoma. I mean, those are the schools that get rated. Their juniors come out early in numbers. And like a diet, what you put in, what you're going to get out. So the NFL is going to come after those guys.
Let me go to Marlon Humphrey here for a couple of minutes. You think he's in the first round somewhere? If so, what range do you see a guy like Marlon Humphrey going?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see here is one corner come off the board early, and that's Lattimore from Ohio State. I think he's a top 10 guy, potentially even a top 5. Now, I would be concerned about the hamstring issues with him, which has been numerous. So I would look at, once Sidney Jones went down to the Achilles, it's helped out just because of the injury, Marlon. And so I think it's put him in that category of late teens into the 20s in round 1. I think that's where Marlon's going to end up getting drafted at. So the last 3 years, there have been 5 defensive backs, 5 cornerbacks taken in round 1. Now, Humphrey's going to be one of those 5 in this draft class. But I do see that every year the same thing comes into play. Big men, especially defensive linemen, pass rushers, they come up the boards pretty quickly toward the end, and also the huge need at quarterback for teams. And so in this very thick class of defensive backs, in another year, Humphrey would have been an early teens pick. This year, he's a late teens, 20s pick.
Cam Robinson, where do you see him? Do you see him as a late first-round guy? I mean, I've seen mock drafts all over the board here with Cam Robinson. Where do you see him falling to?
I think he's a late first-round pick. I like him better on the right side as a right tackle than on the left. But, you just watch him play. And, people, you can nitpick anybody. Archie Manning and I were talking about this just last Friday, that, people nitpick professional players for their weaknesses. So what are you going to say about a college kid coming out? He's got some flaws in his game too. But in this very thin class at tackle, what stands out is Cam is a big road grader. I mean, he is a big man, can run block extremely well. Now, technically, he needs a little work in the pass blocking area, but you know what? When he's pretty doggone good at it, even though he's not maybe at this point the greatest technician from that standpoint, but he is really good all across the board. And I think he's a starting right tackle, a 10-year guy in the NFL. He fits better on that right side, and I think he'll get better as a pass protector. But I like him a lot, and I like him more than maybe because I've seen him more than some of the northern guys have. He's one heck of a football player. And when it's 3rd and one, guess where I'm running? Right up the backside of him.
Yeah, and the one thing that I don't want to be critical of Cam Robinson, but the one thing that I guess I expected more from a guy that is this highly of a pick, he made a lot of mental mistakes, and I'm talking about just illegal procedures, holding calls. That's the only thing that I can really critique about his game is it was like the opportunity was 3rd and 1, and here comes a legal procedure, and it's 3rd and 6. And that's where Cam Robinson, I think, can improve with a little bit different mental focus there in the NFL. Somebody will get that out of him, though.
Yeah, I think that's a focus issue more than anything. That's, I can deal with that. The physical issue is a lot harder to correct than the focus issue. I think when you get in the pros, I heard Coach Orgeron say this yesterday, the day before yesterday. LSU had their pro day, and he brought his entire team out to watch. He said, I just want you guys to take a look. When you're on this practice field with the coaching staff here, we're asking you to do certain things at a certain level and at a certain high percentage. When you get in the pros, they're not asking you, they're telling you. And you better do it at that level or somebody's going to replace you. And I think that's sometimes the cut between college and pros. Of being asked to do something, and you better than most opponents. You're better than that other guy. When you get in the pros, those other guys are every bit as good as you.
Mike, let me travel to a little different here with Ryan Anderson. I see him also all over the board. I see him, late 1st, early 2nd, even some have him out of the 2nd. I'm curious what you think of Ryan Anderson and where you see him fitting in coming up in about 3 weeks.
I think he's a mid to late 2nd round pick. And I think he's going to get kind of caught up here in the pass rush look at outside linebackers and also the run on defensive backs, which is going to shove him down a little bit. He wasn't necessarily used as the pass rusher at Alabama. He did some of it, but, he's just a good, solid, all-around player. From a standpoint of playing the run, getting back in coverage, when they've asked him to blitz, he raised all kind of hell when they went up against LSU. He was in the backfield more than Leonard Fournette was. And they couldn't stop it. So you look at some of those games, and in other games, he did his job. I can't say when you grade him, other than effort, you could give him an A+ on anything, but he's a high B+ student, and he's an effort guy across the board. So I think that he gets caught here in kind of a draft trap, and it does happen. Teams looking for those guys who have been the designated pass rushers. And Ryan's been a good one, but that really wasn't his focus at Alabama. But when you look at his body of work, he is a good player across the board, and I think he'll end up probably going middle of the 2nd round.
Mike, do these players get anything when you go through the evaluation? Because I still believe in the SEC. I know they've been criticized here lately with being down. I know I've been critical of the league being down. But don't you get something playing against the nation's best week in and week out? It's not like some of these conferences where they have a one-game schedule or maybe 2 at the max. Do you get something for playing against the best of the best in the SEC?
Well, I know when I do mine, I give them that credit. And I've heard again, and I don't want to point a finger, but nitpicking Derek Barnett from Tennessee. My thing about it is, if he'd have played at Notre Dame or Ohio State at USC, they wouldn't be questioning him. Wouldn't. Played at Tennessee. So, he broke Reggie White's sack record, but look who he went against. Well, my thing is, he went against top competition every week in his Southeast Conference. He didn't have a breather, so to speak. And I do think SEC play, despite the fact, I think the fall off, and maybe all of us would agree on here, it's been in the pitch and catch game. It's been at the critical quarterback position. That's where maybe the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have made a little run up the board a little bit because they develop the quarterbacks quicker. But defensively, you look at who's going to get picked. Look at all those guys from the Southeast Conference. And again, on the offensive side, 7-on-7 changed the world. Look all the receivers and tight ends coming out of the Southeast Conference. It's just that one spot that has been a sinkhole for a lot of SEC schools, and that's at that critical quarterback spot. So I think it's given the rope, so to speak, to the Pac-12 and also the Big Ten, and I could say even the ACC a little bit, for making a little bit of a run because of that. They've been able to find them and develop them quicker. But when you go up against top competition each week, you've got to be able to give a little bit extra grade-wise because you're not going up against, for some players, they've told me the big jump was when they were in college, they went up against a top player maybe 4 times a year, maybe 4. When you've got a lot more talent than 4 teams you up against in the Southeast Conference. It's a big jump, and that's why I think you've seen the great success of the Southeast Conference players because the speed part and the ability to adjust to the talent level, they've played the best of the best.
Mike, I want to go one final thing. Bobby Bowden made a statement yesterday, and we've played the audio clip a couple different times here on our program, talking about how fans – they're more about offense now than they are defense. He thinks the game has never been better than it is right now in college football. Not that I disagree with a legend, but I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like to see a little balance, but I even sometimes lean towards the defensive side of the football. I'm just curious, with the fans that you connect with, have we really sold out? We don't forget about the defense anymore? Are we really going to the offensive side and we want to see, 52-46 rather than 10-0?
Yeah, I do think it's become entertainment more than anything. And I think, for a younger generation, they're entertained by that 45-40 game instead of, 14-10. I think that's just the way it is today. And, offensively, the spread sort of gave other teams that maybe didn't have the talent level of some of the upper-tier teams a system that they could very shorten the gap up between them. And that you've got a difficult spot here when you can't substitute, when you're running that offense at that quick level. And again, it goes back to that Chip Kelly theory we've talked about, keeping you on the field, wearing you out. That wasn't the case if you look at 70s, 80s football. You weren't playing 90 plays on defense or 80 plays on defense. So I think for this generation, and it's not going to change, you're going to see that put-it-up type offense more and more because you can get those guys, and it's built up to do it. The 7-on-7 sort of now you've changed the world in being able to practice that with wide receivers and running backs and tight ends and defensive backs. So that's what you're looking at today. It's not going to go back to what, you maybe grew up with in the 60s and 70s. That's not going to happen. The world sort of changed. And, I can't agree totally with Bobby that college football today is better than it's ever been. And one of the reasons I say it is there are so few fifth-year seniors, even fourth-year seniors, on a lot of teams, on a lot of good teams, because they've lost them to the NFL. And that wasn't the case growing up and watching it in, say, 60s and 70s football. It was a totally different world. And so now if you got a freshman, you better play him. Because you know what? You're going to lose him in 3 years if he's talented. He's not staying around. And so, I think the coaching has taken a dip more than anything. In my seeing this in 30 years, I think that's a big drop-off in what you see being